I get up 5:30 in the morning and brush my teeth and shower and get ready and make my coffee. I started as a welder fabricator in the industry and progressed through junior management, and there was a kind of a decision that at a point in my career that I either, well, go into business for myself, do what, make the next step, let's put it that way, and I made the decision to get into instruction. It was, I guess, about 15 years ago. The students get in at 8 o'clock. We start class at 8 o'clock in the morning. I try to get in there at least a half hour early to prep. It's a scenic drive, but it gets a little old after a while.
Transportation is our single biggest issue south of the Fraser River. Our population today is 1 million people. It's going to be 1.5 million within about 20 years. We can't continue to allow this growth to happen without providing adequate transportation. We're just going to congest. We can build all the roads we want, but we're going to congest them tomorrow.
So as an old retired planner, I don't have a PowerPoint, but I do come equipped with a whiteboard. The Fraser Valley is a large chunk of land. It's got 1 million people in it. They're spread out, and they and their goods and cargo have to move. And really the only system for most of us is the road system. So if you're not on rubber, you have no way of getting around.
We would be coming up to an American border crossing here, and if there's a lineup, there usually isn't a lineup at 6:30 in the morning. But if there's a lineup, then I'll take a detour. But I am making my way towards Zero Avenue, which is really the most direct route for me to get to Chilliwack. The construction on the freeway, there has been 20-minute delays. I've been doing pretty much this commute to Abbotsford full-time since 01, but in 07 they moved our Trades and Technology campus to Canada Education Park in Chilliwack, added about 20 to 25 minutes to my commute, brought it up to 55 minutes. Just have a look behind it. How many cars he's holding up. Now, if I wanted to be driving his speed, I would have pulled over.
It's the single most important issue we have to face in the development and growth of our region. We have, for the longest time, put our heads firmly in the sand and pretended it was going to go away or somehow it was going to be serviced by bus transportation. That's not going to be adequate when you take a look at the growth and everything that's happening, not just within the township of Langley, but within Surrey and looking at Abbotsford and Chilliwack. As land becomes more expensive, and it is, you're seeing a lot more people moving out the valley. It's incumbent upon all of us to find cost-effective ways that we can provide the types of services that our communities need and want. We've got to sell them on the merits and the interest of the public. The whole purpose of creating the South of Fraser Community Rail Task Force, which has elected representatives from Delta, Surrey, White Rock, Langley City, Langley Township, and Abbotsford, along with Kwantlen University, University of Fraser Valley, and Trinity. We created that to speak with one voice. We have available to us a public asset which is no cost, the Interurban corridor, which runs from Scott Road Station to Chilliwack. It's a community rail as opposed to a commuter rail.
The Interurban first came to our area here, Vancouver and Lower Mainland, in 1891. And it ran from Vancouver to New Westminster, about 14 miles, and it was a thing of beauty. It was of the length that no interurban line in Canada was at that time yet. From New Westminster to Chilliwack, it was 64 miles, and then with a bit of a cut made in the original line between Vancouver and New Westminster, the total track to Chilliwack from Vancouver was about 77 miles. This line, built for $3.5 million, which was, of course, an enormous amount of money in 1910, was built with the hope that everything would expand beyond anyone's dreams, which is exactly what happened. The line out to Chilliwack actually did open up the Fraser Valley. The bridge across the Fraser River at New Westminster had been built in 1904, and with the building of the Interurban line in 1910, it coming on side, people in Chilliwack or anywhere along the way, Langley, Cloverdale, they could commute into New Westminster, particularly for the great market, into Vancouver. But more than that, it enabled milk finally to be delivered on the same day into Vancouver from those wonderful dairy regions around Sardis and Yarrow. And it enabled lumbering to take place. So much of what we see today in the Fraser Valley that is open and habitable, this openness was created by the early logging that went on between 1910 when the line opened and about 1918, 1919.
Most of the distances are traveled south of the river are contained within the south of the river. Surrey will be our region town center. It will be our downtown Vancouver in the years to come. So that population base is more and more is not going to have to cross the bridge.
I think it makes sense. When you look at the amount of land that we have here south of the Fraser, to put SkyTrain from one end of it to the other is just economically not feasible at all. We have existing lines that are already in place, and technology that we could put a lot more track and a lot more kilometers than having SkyTrain.
Here it is. This is the master agreement. This is an agreement that was signed by the provincial government. It is actually BC Hydro on behalf of the provincial government in August 29th, 1988. It sold the rolling stock and the rail to CP, but protected the passenger rights in perpetuity. Without this, we would not have a passenger corridor south of the river. And it was due to expire August 29th last year. We came within 4 months of losing this passenger corridor forever.
BMO, Vancouver Whitecaps FC Soccer is live on Shaw. Tune in Saturday, October 2nd, when the Caps close out the Swangard Stadium era against the Portland Timbers. BMO Whitecaps FC Soccer, only on Shaw.
Watch Voice of BC with Vaughn Palmer and the political newsmakers, bringing BC politics into your living room, Thursdays at 8 p.m. and Sundays at 4 p.m. on Shaw TV.
Because we have the passenger rights, we could provide shared use of that with heavy rail that's currently using that corridor. But it would also provide a service between Chilliwack and Scott Road Station and all of the communities in between.
I get 1 week between fill-ups. You know, the car's pretty good on fuel, but it's about $50 a week. I did sell the truck when the campus moved to Chilliwack.
Was it because of that?
Yes.
What were you driving before?
3/4 ton GMC. It's been about a year and a half, and I've put almost 80,000 kilometers.
It's an important issue because people have to move. They really only have the road system to move on. And a large part of the road system is dedicated to moving people at hopefully high speeds in and out of the valley. We have a lot of communities in the valley, and the connections between them aren't that strong. And the rail runs to most of those communities.
Today we'll follow the Interurban line. We're starting out directly over Scott Road here, showing the original railway bridge running across the Fraser River. Surrey has secured the right-of-way that would take this Interurban directly into the Scott Road station directly below you there.
We've got 6 different communities. We don't have a downtown. We're rather unique. We have Aldergrove, Fort Langley, Walnut Grove, Willoughby, Brookswood, Fern Ridge, and Murrayville. And we have 6 distinctly different communities, all with a certain population center. 80% of our land base is in the agricultural land reserve. So we're very, very confined in terms of where our growth can happen and the quality of life. If you take a look at the Interurban corridor and you look at all of the towns and communities that it goes through, we've got just a whole variety of stops that are potential stops along the way. One of them is Thunderbird Show Park, one of our biggest economic generators out here. The Interurban corridor runs right by their back door.
Ryder from Abbotsford, British Columbia.
The horse industry in British Columbia has an annual economic impact of about $700 million annually. And our biggest challenge is actually getting our spectators and customers and exhibitors here to the park. The closest bus station right now to us is over 4 kilometers away, and as you can imagine, many of our spectators are children and elderly. So having a rail system going right by our doorstep would have a major impact to our business and the amount of spectators and tourists that we could bring to Thunderbird Show Park.
Gloucester Industrial Estates, which is on the eastern edge of Langley Township. It is the major industrial park. We do not have a bus service. We just opened up about 800,000 square feet of warehouse distribution center, and there's no bus service into that facility. The Interurban corridor goes right through it. A short distance from there is the Abbotsford Airport.
If you look at Abbotsford, now that's an international airport. It's an economic generator for the region, and it's only going to get larger, and it's going to become more developed, because I think with that many people in the Lower Mainland, you're going to need a second international airport, which is being developed right now. So again, it's about moving people throughout the region in a way that is sustainable. And right now, there's no linkage there, so everybody's dependent on cars. So we've got to reverse that trend.
There are so many opportunities in terms of connecting all of these different communities, which are really the communities where people are living. We have right now, between Kwantlen University, we have 3 campuses. Trinity University, we have 1 campus. University of Fraser Valley, I believe they've got 3 campuses south of the river. Their biggest single issue is transportation, or lack of transportation for their students.
Students have asked us repeatedly to deal with the challenges they face as they try to get between our various campuses. So what are you up to today? At a number of our campuses, it's possible for students to take most of their first year, but if they want to take any of our specialty programs in trades, for example, in nursing, in teacher education, in criminology, criminal justice, they would have to go to one of our campuses. And for students who don't live in that city, they need public transportation to get there. We don't see the solution as putting more students in cars, putting them on the highways. I see the rail line as providing one solution. For example, it's my understanding it passes fairly close to our campus in Abbotsford and fairly close to our campus in Chilliwack.
Anything that improves the air quality, for one, is a major. There is the convenience, there's the safety, there's the time, as we had discussed, it was a personal issue of my own. But back to the first one I mentioned, the air quality. I live out in South Surrey, and a bit of a breezy morning this morning, and it was blowing all the Vancouver pollutants, all the rush hour traffic, greenhouse gases, pollutants, etc., blowing them all out to the valley, the beautiful Fraser Valley.
What is sustainability anyway? Well, here at the Sustainable Region, we try to answer that question and show how it relates to your life. Watch us on Channel 4 or online at metrovancouver.org.
If you've just met Fiona, you know that she struggles a little bit with mascots, and today...
Fiona. Michael.
Done and done,
Done and done.
my friend. Amazing!
Transportation, is basically in our region the biggest single source of greenhouse gas. It's not from aluminum plants, it's not from coal mines here in BC, it's from just us driving around. That represents the carbon emissions in kilograms per passenger mile. If you're just driving around in your Ford Explorer, which is shown down on the bottom, you're basically cooking the planet pretty quick. But even those good people who are using the bus now, it's not great. In some circumstances, it's not as good as a Prius, depending on how many people are in the car. So just by switching everybody into buses, that doesn't help. You'll see SkyTrain is a lot more, twice as much as the tram. We reason why is that there's a whole lot of concrete in the SkyTrain system. And concrete is responsible for over 5% of the world's greenhouse gas production. When Portland cement is produced, there's a ton of energy that goes into it. Usually that's either from oil or coal. That's about half of it. The other half, though, curiously, is when concrete cures, when it dries and it hardens, it gives off CO2 in massive amounts.
If you take a look at the valley, and we all know the airshed that we have and the concern, and it's a very, very serious concern of the airshed from eastern Langley right up to Hope. What is causing most of that pollution? Automobile and truck traffic. This will stop an awful lot of that. The property owners of the Township of Langley right now, we're submitting about $12 million a year in taxation to Transit. We're not getting that value back in any way, shape, or form in terms of transit and transportation.
The thick blue line there indicates where the Trans-Can Highway is and where they're presently spending $3.1 billion to replace one bridge and to add a lane onto the existing Trans-Can Highway. That's how much $3.1 billion buys you in freeway. So for the same $3.1 billion, using the same methodology and using the same technology as our benchmark, as shown in the lower left, this Cambino tram system from Europe, we show with all the red and green lines just how much of a system you could buy. In this case, pretty much 80% of all the people who live in Surrey and Langley district would be within a 10-minute walk of this system. And this system could also, with the same $3.1 billion, connect across the Fraser River at the Golden Ears Bridge. That's the north-south connection there you see crossing the river, and extend out to Maple Ridge and then back over to Coquitlam, serving regions that have needed to be served forever. If you happen to get lucky and you live right at a SkyTrain station and you're going to your job at some other SkyTrain station, SkyTrain's for you. But there's no way that 90% of the people in the region are going to satisfy that criteria. For the rest of us, we're not going to be able to just jump on the SkyTrain and take advantage of that huge taxpayer subsidy that went to us. We're going to be the ones paying for that ride. For us, it's either going to be use our car and pay for that, or jump on a bus, getting at the station at the SkyTrain, getting off at the other end, if we get to use the SkyTrain at all, and wait for another bus or have a long walk to get where we're going. So I think it makes more sense for everybody, except for that narrow group of people. For the rest of us, it's better to spend that same amount of money and have, an electrified rail system within a 10-minute walk.
Any time that I would be on that form of transit would give me time to catch up on my homework. I would assume I would be able to use my cell phone, make any connections that I needed to make, mark papers. It would be an hour of the day each way, or whatever the commute would end up being. I would get back 2 hours of the day that I don't have now to either relax or do something productive.
The Township of Langley cannot compete in any way, shape, or form with Vancouver over capacity. We just can't. But that doesn't mean that the people of Aldergrove and the people of Gloucester and the people of the Township of Langley don't require an adequate, proper transportation service. So what does that look like? Is that going to be SkyTrain? The reality is it's not, because SkyTrain is just a Cadillac of systems and is not the appropriate system or use for the south of the river. It just isn't.
The tram is about half the price of the SkyTrain. What is also interesting is the tram is somewhat less expensive than a normal bus. People always say, well, why should you pay all that extra money for something on rails, that fancy streetcar looking thing, when you could have a bus for a whole lot less money? Well, you can have a bus for less money for the first few years, But because you have to put fuel in them, that costs money. Plus, you don't have as many passengers per driver. That costs money. And plus, because the vehicles only last like 10 years instead of 30 years for these others, when you add all those costs in over the 30-year amortization period, which is what these numbers are based on, the tram is cheaper. In fact, it's just about the cheapest option of them all.
One of the things that we want to do, and we want to push the government to do, is to work with us in Translink, is to provide a demonstration line. And we're looking at a demonstration line that might go from Scott Road Station to Trinity or to Gloucester or something like that, and try to do that for a year or two. To me, this is probably the biggest single opportunity that we're going to have in decades to improve our transportation and our ability to really grow and provide manageable growth, provide a transportation network that makes sense.